I agree with you entirely, Beth, and it's glad to see you, Jesse. How are you, Jesse? Rocky is here so far. Okay, well, say hello to Rocky. I don't know, how does Rocky want to be referred to and responded to? Let me know. Good morning to you, Jesse, and to everybody else. I hope you are having the best Saturday of your life, and I'm going to do whatever I can to ensure that it's the best Saturday. There's not much I can do, right? We kind of all do this together. Let me just drop this a bit. But I hope you had an awesome day. Tao, good to see you as well. And yeah, this is a pretty wild week, but I want to welcome you all to Freedom Coffee live stream, where we all celebrate the freedoms that we have and the freedoms that we fought for successfully, us and previous generations. And let's look forward to the various freedoms that we can expand in the future, and different strategies and ideas and all that stuff. And like I always say, the way to do that is get out of a state of anxiety, and the way to do that is with a cup of coffee. I take my sip, now I'm in a positive state. I'm usually in a positive state. I mean, you kind of know that, right? Good morning, Megan. It's good to see you as well. And everybody else who's starting to join. Well, a bunch of people starting to join in a bunch of different platforms here. That's pretty cool. So this week, I spent the week with Peter McCormick. I know some of you have become Bitcoiners. You'll know who he is. Some of you won't. He has a podcast called What Bitcoin Did. He's been doing it since 2017. I think it's one of the most popular podcasts in the Bitcoin space. And Peter has been doing documentaries on various things around the world. So it's very cool to spend the week with Peter and his team. They're all really solid dudes. And what's really good about it is we have a lot of things we disagree on, and a lot of things we do agree on. And it's so nice to go back to a time where, all the animosity that we are brainwashed to have towards people we disagree with is starting to subside, and we're starting to all kind of get along and respect each other's opinions, and even those we disagree with, and say, okay, there's certain things we're just not going to agree on. But I mean, me and Peter didn't have much of that, but it was pretty wild, because for me, I remember when I was first getting my trucking license, something I never thought I would ever do in a million years, but I did it, and I was doing my training, which basically means driving in the city, learning to go destinations, and learning how to dock and all that sort of stuff. And one of the first podcasts I started listening to in the truck when I was going through that training period was a podcast called What Bitcoin Did, because I was kind of new to Bitcoin. And there were a few of them, but this was, I guess this was the biggest Bitcoin podcast at the time. And here we are several years later, and we're hanging out, having breakfast together in a diner, discussing all the things kind of we've gone through since that time. And it was pretty cool. I think all of you are going to like the project that he's working on, irrespective of where you lie on the political spectrum, which is what that's what he's trying to achieve, I think. And I hope that's what happens. Voice of Reason, good morning. Please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to press the like button. Or as Adam says, pound that like button. That's Adam Meister, a friend of mine in Bitcoin, who told everybody to buy $10,000 of Bitcoin in 2013. I guess he was right. I'm no G-Day Productions. Good morning. By the way, I'm no DJ. I'm going to be in Montreal in May. There's going to be a conference in May, so I will be there. So hopefully a bunch of us can get together when I'm there. And please come out if you're able to. All right, so while I was with Peter McCormick, before we went to Ottawa, when we were still in the Toronto area, we got some news. And the news was that Prime Minister Blackface, according to a ruling by Justice Mosley, who's a justice that was even on my radar long before Freedom Convoy, in relation to a podcast that I had produced prior called The Quicken Report. So we got this word that the Emergency Measures Act, or the invocation of the Emergency Measures Act, was indeed in violation of what we call the Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms. That's our human rights and freedoms laws in Canada. Prime Minister Blackface violated it in his invocation of the EMA for the Freedom Convoy and for freezing our bank accounts. And I thought, well, duh, yeah, I could have told you on the day he did that. And in fact, I did. That was my perspective, because what did he have? He had a bunch of trucks that were, at worst, in violation of city parking bylaws. But even that is contentious because the city of Ottawa and the Ottawa police were the ones who told Chris Guerra where to park the trucks. That's the thing that everybody wants to ignore in the government. Both sides. Conservatives and liberals, whatever. They both want to ignore because both of them don't have any interest in the Freedom Convoy, and they're always playing catch-up to virtue signal around it while throwing it under the bus. It was the city, it was the government and the city of Ottawa that told us where to park, right? But anyways, so Prime Minister Blackface lost his temper again because he's I'm not going to use bad words. He's a child. I think that's even an insult to children. I don't think he's that smart, to be entirely honest. You saw, for those of you who aren't in Canada, there was an incident several years ago where he went back to being a bouncer, because he used to be a bouncer, I think, in a gay nightclub, if I'm not mistaken. And he basically elbowed one of the female MPs and pushed her out of the way. Now, regular Canadians just don't care, because it's just, all right, it's just an MP. Who really cares about any of them? But, the political class, it's like, elbowing royalty, They're so full of themselves and have their heads so far up their own asses. And we got to start calling that out, because we're never going to get back to a stage where people understand philosophically they work for us, not the other way around. But anyways, so Prime Minister Blackface lost his temper again, and him and some other people in cabinet. And because the trucks were at worst, and this is also debatable, violating city parking bylaws, they brought in Canada's equivalent to martial law, right? So if you park your car illegally in downtown of whatever city you are, if you're there too long, they might send in the tanks, right? For those of you who saw the memes. And that resulted from the communications that were linked, that's what they were discussing. They were debating how many tanks would it take to bring in the truck. That's how out of touch these morons are. Like they're all failed lawyers and failed real estate agents that couldn't cut it in the private sector. That's why these D-bags go into politics. They're the worst of the worst, and it's in all parties. It's not just one parties. They are losers, all of them. Anyways, Steve says resigning won't save his ass. Yeah, what I'm very interested in is what law firm did this gentleman I'm going to talk to go to next. Anyways, some people are asking, what's about legal challenges and what can we do and all that sort of stuff. And yes, I'm talking to lawyers, real lawyers, not the clown show political crap that came to the convoy to subvert us, but actual real lawyers. So those of you know, I produce a podcast called Not on Record with Joseph Newberger, who's a criminal lawyer. And I have another law firm coming up with another podcast, and there's a few things coming up. So I'm around a lot of lawyers. I know a lot of real lawyers. That's how I knew Keith Wilson was an ambulance chaser when he showed up. And I actually mentioned it to Tamara and said, get rid of this guy. He's a loser. He doesn't know what he's talking about, right? No, he's good and whatever. Do you know him? No, I don't really know him. Yeah, another lie. Because Keith Wilson was running for president of a riding association while she was an activist for the same party, the Wild Rose Party. But yet somehow they didn't know each other. Like, everybody was lying. It was so frustrating. But anyways, whatever. Let's get on let's get back to Sewer Rat Lametti. So, Sewer Rat Lametti was the former Justice Minister, a.k.a. Sewer Rat. And he was the one who famously said to the legacy media during the convoy that perhaps anybody who shows pro-Trump sentiments should be jailed. So he believes in jailing people for their opinions. That's the type of intellectual garbage that we have with the morons in our politics. So anyways, he became the Justice Minister during a time where Trudeau was under significant scrutiny for what was a massive scandal in Canada, SNC-Lavalin. And by the way, there's so much more the legacy media hasn't told any of you, stuff that I've learned through other back channels and means, having a private jet and a kidnapping and just some wild stuff in Latin America that was related to all this stuff. But anyways, he was appointed by Prime Minister Blackface to replace Jody Wilson-Raybould, who is an awful human being herself, because she invoked law in Canada, or I shouldn't say that. She removed, and we talk about this on Not on Record, the process, the 300-year plus tradition in British common law of pre-trials for sexual offenders. So that's what Josie Wilson-Raybould did. So just repeat, there was a 300-year-long tradition for pre-trials, and the idea is for a judge to look at the evidence and say, okay, this is nonsense, we're not going to waste the court's time with it. So Jody Wilson-Raybould removed that 300-year tradition of that process, specifically in sexual assault Me Too claims, to force people who were accused in Me Too allegations to essentially use it was almost using the government as lawfare. You know, the people who, let me explain it a little bit easier, a little bit better. When you go through the process of going to trial, it's very, very expensive and very time-consuming. But if you have a pre-trial, then it allows a judge to go through the evidence and see if this is just a joke claim, if this is just clown world. And the judge can say, okay, we're going to proceed and send it off to a scheduling judge, or I'm just dismissing it, this claim has no merit. Jody Wilson-Raybould removed that process, which has been in act for 300 plus years in British common law, because what that does is that artificially inflates wrongful convictions, because it forces people, often young men on university campuses, who don't have the money to fight the legal battle, to plea bargain. So she tried to artificially inflate wrongful convictions. She is garbage. And I get frustrated when conservatives celebrate her. Oh, she stood up to Trudeau. Yeah, okay. Garbage versus garbage is what that was. So anyways, when she was removed by Blackface, she was replaced by Sewer Rat Lametti. And his job was to ensure that the government would not prosecute SNC-Lavalin. Now, there are good arguments on the other side, believe it or not. Thousands of jobs that were at stake. It was integral to various economies, and I get that. But, you know, sometimes there's a middle ground, but, you know, extremists don't do a middle ground. Extremists do left versus right, black versus white, red versus blue. They don't live in reality, which is the murky complexity in between. So they brought him in, and he just ensured there would be no prosecution forward. Now, what's interesting about Sewer Rat Lametti is on the second day of the convoy, and I can't put it up on the screen here, but there's a text message here. The second day after the convoy, he was already suggesting within his cabinet, and maybe this is why there were liberal cabinet members talking to me through a conduit, because they knew they had an extremist maniac, Canada's version of Mussolini, in the Justice Minister position. By the way, what law firm did he go to? I think we should expose that law firm and talk a little bit more about them coming forward. But anyways, this is his what he said in a text message to, I can't remember the name of the other cabinet member, but because I can't flip screens here. But what he said is, Do we have a and the parentheses part is the scary part. Do we have, this is David Lametti on the second day of the convoy communicating to another cabinet member. Do we have a contingency for these trucks to be removed tomorrow or Tuesday? Parentheses. If they were black or indigenous. Parentheses. I'm going to read that again because I don't think you heard that right. Do we have contingencies? Do we have a contingency for these trucks to be removed tomorrow or Tuesday? Parentheses. If they were black or indigenous. So this extremist KKK fucking maniac wants to apply the law differently if there are people amongst the truckers, which there were many, who were black or indigenous. If they're just white guys like him, I would argue he's just white trash. But if there's white guys that are amongst the truckers, most of whom who were Eastern European, by the way, that's why they were protesting, because they know what communist creep looks like. Those people, they have one set of rules. But according to the Justice Minister at the time, Surat Lametti, if they were black or indigenous, quote, then they get different treatment, different applications of the law. I have a question for the Ontario Law Society. Or is it still called Upper Canada? No, I think it's still Ontario. I don't know where he practices. I don't care. He's garbage. How is this guy a lawyer? How is he a barrister and solicitor? Because in order to be called to the bar and be a member of the bar, you have to be a person of good character. I'm going to read it again. Is this a person of good character? Do we have a contingency for these trucks to be removed tomorrow or Tuesday? Quote, if they were black or indigenous. End quote. That is KKK philosophy. The difference is it's an out-group preference, not an in-group preference. But that's the same extremist, violent, collectivist behavior. How is that garbage a member of the Ontario Law Society? So if you want to do something, start harassing and bombarding and emailing the Ontario Law Society and ask how we're going to why do we have people who are members of the bar who want to apply the law differently based on race. There's a lawyer doing that, a barrister and solicitor. By the way, for those in the UK, we don't have separate barristers and solicitors. They do both jobs together. Something I learned recently that's different in the UK. But anyways, what do you think? What do you think we should do? Lametti joined Fraskin in Montreal. Oh, so he's on the Montreal bar. Okay, so maybe that's where we should be posing some questions, asking them. Reach the various boards in these law societies. Start asking, find out who the lawyers are on the law society in Quebec. Start messaging them indirectly. Individually. Ask them, how is this trash a person of good character? How is he a member of the bar? Perhaps file a bar complaint. Perhaps everybody file bar complaints with this message. I'll post it on Twitter so you can grab it and just send it and start asking about it, right? He got his law degree from a bubble gum machine. Good morning, Cheryl. It's good to see you. Anyways, his title is counsel. Oh, okay, so he's now going to be counsel. Well, at least he's not partner. I think people need to make some noise about this. You want to do something in politics? You want to fight back? This is how you fight back. Find out who are all the board members of the Law Society in Montreal and get as many people as you can, thousands of people if you can, to start asking them, send them this message, and how is this somebody who wants to engage in a race war, how is he a member of the bar? Because that's what he was fueling, right? Anyways, by the way, I'm not angry, I'm just passionate. It's just, I've been laughing all week. And I'm with Peter McCormick, and he comes out to the truck, and the first thing he says is like, dude, look at this headline. And it was in the fake news even the fake news couldn't ignore it. And I think the quote in the newspaper he had I don't know how you found a newspaper. By the way, newspapers are really, really thin and small now. Isn't that hysterical? And the newspaper he showed me, the headline was something like the invocation of the Emergency Measures Act violated, and the freezing of the bank accounts. Sorry, the freezing of the bank accounts violated the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which is important because we do live in the digital age. When you do freeze people out of their money and ability to transact, that one can argue is the equivalent of a human rights violation. It's not like we all have farms in the back of our places. I live in an apartment. I don't have a field where I'm planting tomatoes and onions and stuff. We live in the digital age where everybody's dependent on the infrastructure that we have, meaning grocery stores, the supply chain, digital transactions. That is trying to starve people, which is what I said during the convoy, that the government was trying to starve us. And there's one person in particular I remember where in Ottawa was freaking out because they had all of their accounts and credit cards and everything was frozen, and they needed to buy insulin 2 weeks after. Well, what happens then? So in that case, it was the government trying to kill that person. That is how authoritarian the Trudeau blackface regime has become. Anyways, so Sewer Rat Lametti. I recommend everybody make this a little pet project on the side. There will be grocery stories with Trudeau, and yeah, I know. Tao, you're a great brother. I miss you. You would have loved Tao. Tao is, how do we describe you? I would say, I don't like giving the labels and stuff, but we do have a lot of things we agree with and disagree with politically. Tao and I, and we are always discussing this from a philosophical perspective. You would have really enjoyed the conversations that Pete and I had this week, but hopefully you'll get the chance to see them in a few months when everything comes out. All right, next, have you seen these convoys? Jack Layton NDPer. Tao, you're killing me. Jack Layton NDPer. I mean, he was very personable. I'll give Jack Layton that here, because that's where I live. I live in his old riding. Everybody knew him. He talked to everybody when he's walking around. He's very personable, so he's a very good politician in that way. And by the way, did you know when Jack Layton this is how corrupt politics is. So Jack Layton was a city councillor who was very popular just because people in the neighborhood knew who he was and all that sort of stuff, right? Very charismatic. For those who don't know, he has since passed away. And his wife, who is a socialist, which is the problem, is now the mayor of Toronto. But that's besides the point. Well, let's just talk about people and themselves. So when he was a city councillor and he was going to enter party politics, because in Toronto or in Ontario, you can't be a party member when you're on the municipal level. Even though they all are, it's all corrupt, they all lie, they all pretend they're not. He technically was not a member. Okay, fine. Did you know the Conservatives tried to recruit him? The Conservatives, the Liberals, and NDP tried to recruit him. Yes, it's like drafting players for sports. That's how politics works. And they had a meeting in Eastern Canada at one of the there's a place where Conservatives have high-level private meetings. And he was offered a sum of money to join the Conservative Party, but he went to the NDP because the NDP offered him more money. Welcome to politics, drafting municipal politicians to go to the national level. That's how it works here. That's how corrupt it is. Anyways, all right. Texas convoys. What do you guys think? I hope this is not going to upset people, but I'm worried. I'm really worried. I'm seeing a pattern. Now, somebody sent me a message earlier today, or I woke up to this message, and it said, do you think that the Texas convoy is a psyop to discredit the Freedom Convoy? And although that's a little bit of a stretch, there's no question. I mean, Americans don't really care about Canada, right? That's just the way it is. However, It would be a good way to discredit all convoys and used as a weapon to discredit Trump slash, what does Dementia Hitler call him? They call them the MAGA extremists or whatever. This would be a good way to get a lot of B-roll to show, quote, MAGA extremists. Now, and the political class always needs, the victimization side of the political aisle always needs a boogeyman to point to for the normies. So the normies get scared off and think, okay, I'm just going to stick with, Dementia Hitler or blackface Trudeau, right? Like, that's kind of the goal here. And what's interesting is the interlinked nature of what's happening in Canada and the US. So in Canada, we've had, I think, 6 attempts for a convoy that was completely run by the same Fed operation that sold out the truckers. That's why I've been warning all of you. We did a convoy. We sent the message. The political class is scared. Now we sit back and wait for the next election, right? Like, don't get over our skis. Let's just, it is a long game. So we've had 6 attempts to bait people into convoys because Trudeau needs a boogeyman. He needs a boogeyman so the legacy media can put them on on TV and say, look at the rise of white supremacy in Canada, blah, 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 whatever, all that sort of stuff. It's pure propaganda. It is pure pravda. There's no question. Although I think that's starting to change, and I'll explain that in a second. So they tried this 6 times. A number of us who saw how they tried to turn the Freedom Convoy into a psyop, and when that didn't work, they brought in the horses to trample all of us, right? I'm worried that something like that might be going on in the States. I don't know, right? But I'm not just some schmuck with an opinion. I was right there in the middle and saw how all these people operate. And I've seen how they operate also on the inside when I was involved politically. So this is not just some Joe schmuck coming up with, just a random opinion. This is as informed as it gets. So I would say I would be very, very, very careful with what's going on there. The Dementia Hitler regime in the U.S. is desperate for a boogeyman, and they do this every time they're dropping in the polls or there's a major scandal. This is each of the 6 times they did that in Canada, where you saw all these calls from all these groups that got infiltrated by the people who sold out the Freedom Convoy. All of a sudden saying, let's have another convoy. And I remember asking some people, like, what are you protesting? There's no mandates, and there's no 𝐒𝐉𝐃. Oh, well, Trudeau is a tyrant. Okay, well, that is vague and ambiguous. The Freedom Convoy was very pointed and specific. That's what a protest is. But when it's vague, then it's just propaganda. Or they call PSYOPs. That's what PSYOPs are. PSYOPs are just propaganda. So I would just be very careful, because we saw what they did with January 6th. There are some people who have been unfairly convicted and jailed, and then there are other people who've had their reputations destroyed as a result. And now that we see all the video that was released how many years after the fact, that the police just let them in, it was clearly a trap. And I don't want this to be a trap in Texas. Let the legislators deal with it. The federal government will fight with the state government. Just show that you have the backing of the state government. Let them do this legislatively, because this is that whole states' right issue in the United States. This isn't going to be solved with one convoy, right? So just show support for the pushback against the Biden regime. And that's kind of when we did the Freedom Convoy. I remember initially when they said to me, okay, well, we're going to go to Ottawa and we're going to protest Trudeau, and they didn't really have any specific goals. And I said, no, let's go to Ottawa and let's celebrate Canada. Let's take off our masks, because we had mask mandates then, because we had hard lockdowns coming in again. Let's celebrate being free. Let's celebrate all of us coming together. A celebration is very difficult for the government to turn into an aggressive mob when you're just celebrating and dancing and all that sort of stuff. So I would just be very careful with the messaging there. I don't see anybody doing messaging, but I see a lot of political strategy going on behind the scenes. Maybe what they'll do is they'll co-opt it like they do everything else. They'll get some footage. The footage will work for both sides. So both sides, well, wow, MAGA extremist, we're not that. We're just regular milquetoast politicians who don't take any stands or don't fight back against anything because we make sure to pocket part of the end of every deal and sell the rest of you out, and then they'll just move on. Who knows? But I'm worried if people are not aware, then you're going to see more innocent people go to jail. Now, truckers generally, people don't understand this about truckers. Because of all the regulations, because of the intricacies of the equipment, all the checks we have to do, all the maintenance you have to do with a truck, it really turns you into a systems thinker. So you look at the more broad perspective of how things work. That's why trying to bait the Freedom Convoy truckers in Ottawa, it really didn't work. It worked with the people who weren't truckers. You know, the mouthy a-holes who came to Ottawa just to get us all fighting with each other and sow division. It worked with them, but truckers are, one thing, they are is very, very patient. You get that from a lot of times waiting on the road to get your load sorted out and having to do your paperwork and checking your ELDs and stuff like that. Trucking has become more similar to piloting an airplane than it is what they try to teach you in the movies, you know, that people are knuckle draggers and half-cocked. That's not how truckers are at all, especially since so many of them are ex-military. And one of the things you learn in the military when you go in at a young age is you learn to be a systems thinker. So difficult people to bait. So I'm hopeful that that won't happen, but it's not them that will cause trouble, just like in January 6th. It's the agent provocateurs that are among them. They will start the problems, and I don't want everybody else to suffer as a result. So I just say, my suggestion to everybody there, proceed with caution. Don't trust anyone. Be skeptical, and if anybody shows any mood and behavior beyond all coming together and supporting one another, then be very skeptical of them and keep them as far away as possible. And that's what we tried to do. It worked for a few weeks, but anyways, the Subversion. By the way, there's a great article, Diverge Media. He now has 8 articles on his website, divergemedia.com. on the subversion of the Freedom Convoy. And from what I understand, what he tells me, this is like 1% of what he has. There's so much more coming down the pipeline. So it's going to be an interesting year. Don't bring a truck to a gunfight between armed federal officers and armed militias. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, Tao. See, Tao, we agree on so much sometimes, right? But anyways. Cheryl says another January 6th op. That's what I'm concerned about, right? Lisa says, nope, Canadians went to Texas too. Well, I don't know. I have no idea. We'll find out. And I have some people in the U.S. that are reaching out to me quietly and privately as well, so we'll see what happens. And this is, by the way, this is why I talk so much about the subversion of the Freedom Convoy and how they all sold us out, and then when it went sideways, they exploited all of you for money so they could pocket it. Because this is not the first time it happened. It happens all the time. And I think we're seeing it happen again, both in Europe and here. And I've called out some of those people online. I say, look, smells awfully familiar. Oh, same people who are attacking us have now started supporting the German farmers. So the political class does this regularly. And the Freedom Convoy is the best mechanism that I have, and independent media journalists like Diverge, and there's a couple of others working on it quietly, that they can show you this is how the political class weaponizes these things and uses them for divide and conquer. So don't take the bait. Just like I was saying during the Freedom Convoy, don't take the bait. Stick with the bouncy castles and the dance parties. And yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about that, but just a little concerned. All right, a little bit of a white pill, and then we're going to, is there something else I missed? No, I got it. A little bit of a white pill, and then move on because I got a meeting very soon, actually. So we all see what's happening in legacy media, alternative media especially. It's all negative. It's all rage bait. It's all to make you angry. It's all to use you for donations. So they get you into a state of fear or anger and then say, donate here to you'reangryateverything.com, right? You see this on all sorts of alternative media platforms. And then the legacy media, they just don't have the .com, but they do the same thing. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this. I don't think I'm misremembering. Watching the fake news as a kid, knowing it was fake, but there would always be a segment of something positive, good things going on in the world. There was that woman on CNN who was a little bit nuts, and they turned her into a propagandist as well. But there would always be some segment to give people a sense of hope and positivity and advancements in technology. It was a popular way they did that. Or, community engagement, yeah, sometimes it's just propaganda, but it gave you the positive feels. This is why I love Bitcoin so much, because Bitcoin gives hope for people in the future, right? It shows that there is an alternative to clown world where you can park your labor and your money and keep it off the system just in case. It's your insurance policy. So I came across this article. This is pretty amazing, similar to the last one. So last one I talked about how there's some technology now where they've 3D printed a heart inside a pig without an incision. So it's not like they cut open and 3D printed. No, it went, I don't know how it works. It's similar to how they etch diamonds. If you look at former diamond grader and gemologist. So when you do an analysis on a diamond, when I'm not doing it on a loop, but when I put it in a microscope and do like a detailed evaluation, you're measuring all the inclusions, and you have these little sliders in the microscope. And okay, this one's 3 micron meters. This one is a fracture. This one's carbon deposit. All that sort of stuff. So around the time when I was a gemologist and a diamond grader, the technology came out where they could laser etch stuff inside the diamond. It was really cool. It was really, really pretty wild. And you've probably seen that sort of stuff now with glass crystals, obsidian crystals, whatever, different trade shows and stuff. So they've now applied that to medicine, and they can 3D print a heart. Pretty wild. And I thought, wow, that sounds like a tricorder to me. I guess that's what a tricorder in Star Trek was, right? Who knows? But I came across this story that now, and it's another medical related, and maybe because I know nothing about medicine, that it's interesting to me. But there's now a company called Ossiform that has created technology, a new form of 3D printing technology that can print bone. So it can print bone, and it's not like it prints your full bone. Let's say you have a fracture in your skull, or you're missing a piece, or part of your bone breaks off in a serious accident, or I don't know, maybe you have osteoporosis and your bones are weak. They can actually 3D print a portion or an entire bone that matches your DNA. Pretty wild, right? I have a couple of things to read from it here, very short, but it's creating patent-specific replacements of different bones. It's called tricalcium phosphate is the material that it 3D prints. It's a material with similar properties to human bones. And using these 3D printed bones, it's surprisingly easy. A hospital can perform an MRI, which is then sent to Ossiform, who create a 3D model of the patient-specific implant that is needed. The surgeon accepts the design, and then once printed, it can be used surgically, so implanted surgically. What is special about these 3D printed bones is that because of the use of tricalcium phosphate, the body will remodel the implants into vascularized bone. That means they will enable the full restoration of function of the bone that it had replaced. I mean, this is, if you're in the prosthetics industry, this is a massive leap forward it's the implications of this are so many. It's and then add that. So now you have this technology where we can 3D print replacement bone parts for you, specific to you and your injury. So it can just print a section of your bone that's missing, right? Well, add that technology, plug it into, I'm going to say this generally, although it's more detailed, but we're going to talk, on basic terms here. Add that to an AI algorithm, teach the AI algorithm everything it needs to know about medicine, prosthetics, bone density, bone cancers, all the research we have through all of human history, and ask the AI to offer solutions how this technology can be improved upon what we know so far. We are entering into such an amazing age where the world, like James Burke talked about, the acceleration of change is going to be so quick that every 2 years it will be like 100 years of advancement. That's what's starting right now. Like, this is so amazing. I mentioned last time Dr. David St. Clair's life extension hypotheses with the epigenome and all that sort of stuff. There's so much good going on. I'm talking about bullshit politics all the time online. Like, it's always, this politician's good, this one's bad. Like, it's so obnoxious. They all suck. And remember, most of the world's democracies in 2024 are having national elections. So it's going to be never ending this year. Let's just get used to it, right? But my point in all of this is all amazing technology. Maybe it eventually ends up and culminates on when people become amputees, that through this 3D bone printing technology and other technologies that are in the works, that we can ultimately, over time, I guess, fabricate replacement tissue. Because the heart thing with a pig, that's 3D printing biomaterial, like your arm, biomaterial. And this prints the bone material. And it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's going to take a while, but that's where we're going. So blue versus red, black versus right, conservative versus liberal, like, this is all lazy thinking. It's designed to put all of us in silos and ignore all the good things that are happening, by the way, in the private sector. This is all private sector advancements. But people in government, people in politics, they get addicted to the government solves all your problems. And this is where the libertarians think, and I think correctly, there are some exceptions, but government causes the problems, right? That if government supported private industry and let private industry innovate, this is the world that we'll build. Is it a perfect system? Of course not. Nothing is. But anyways. Oh, and the last thing on a positive note, with legacy media. So I did, on my way to Ottawa with Peter McCormick. And by the way, check out his podcast, What Bitcoin Did. Okay? And you're going to hear somebody who probably has a lot of differing political views than you on some issues, and then agrees with you on some issues. So it's kind of a good place. But anyways, on my way to Ottawa, I had to stop at one of the en routes, because I was asked to do an interview on legacy media. And all of you know, I am not a fan of legacy media, with some exceptions. What I haven't said all this time is there are people I know in legacy media that are trying, much like people in politics and within the parties, that are trying to bring us back to normal life, away from clown world, and they've been sticking it out. So I got a call from one of the legacy media stations in Canada who reached out, somebody who he's remembered me from many years ago from another thing I was involved in, another project, private sector project. And so they had me, they asked me to come on, and I agreed. So I said, yeah, sure, we'll come on for a 5-minute hit. I figured now that Trudeau has been handed his ass, and not Trudeau, all of them with this whole EMA thing, the NDP who supported them, the Conservatives that were weak and fickle, they couldn't make a decision, all of them have been exposed. Now you can see there are people in legacy media who are getting a little bit more courage in pushing back again, because they're not going to necessarily lose their job if they tell the truth. This is a sign, this is something to be very positive about. And I agreed. I said, yeah, sure, let's, we'll do it. I think we did it at 5 o'clock. It was on the drive home, or my drive to Ottawa. And they wanted to talk for 5 minutes. We ended up talking for 25 minutes, I think. And they told me they're going to bounce it and stitch it together and bounce it into a podcast and upload it sometime soon. I don't think they'll deceptively edit it. I don't think so. I think it's just going to be exactly our conversation, because it was a good conversation. And it was a lot of things I told them that they didn't even, I mean, the people who are hosting are now becoming aware of what was going on. But there's a lot of people now understanding what happened in Ottawa. That's why I keep posting, and Scott Adams has been posting this too, that it takes 1 to 5 years for the truth about a political event to come out. And we're just about 2 years into it. So we're getting there. You're going to get the truth. That's why you need to follow Diverge Media and donate to Greg, who's working himself to death to get to the truth, right? So I think there's so much cause for positivity. I think the really rough patches have passed us. We're going to head into an election. The Conservatives, by the way, are canvassing already. They started canvassing two weeks ago. So we are going to be having an election this year, unless something significant happens, like, I don't know, a Texas trucking convoy that they can point to blame us. Like Trudeau just said this week, oh, Trump would be dangerous for democracy, just as the trucker convoy in Texas started. Do you think that's a coincidence? Because I can tell you, that's not a coincidence. That is linked political messaging. And that's why they're going to call an election before Trump's election. And Trudeau and Jerry, his brain, are going to try to brainwash all of you, meaning Canadians, that the Trump election will destroy all democracy. So vote for us. We're going to protect it. That's how they're going to try to sell themselves. So there you go. Good news. We're going to head into an election. I don't think Trudeau has a chance. I think everybody is tired. I know enough liberals who've reached out to me, who I've spoken to. Good people who we disagree with, but they just want to get back to normal. They, too, are fed up with the blackface regime, and they want to move forward. And also, part of the reason I don't do political team play and all these, influencers online doing political team play and becoming mouthpieces for the Conservatives. What happens when the Conservatives get into power and they don't do what they said? And you end up with Doug Ford, who has more left-wing policies than Kathleen Wynne, but right-wing rhetoric. Then what? Now they're stuck. So I don't do political team play, I just do truth. Truth is my team. I promised all of you I would never vote. I would never lie to you. I haven't. And as evidenced by the fact that everything I've said, as Joe Rampart likes to say, I've been 100% consistent every time he's spoken to me over the past 2 years, which some people aren't, as you know, as you've seen some of their interviews with Jordan Peterson and Dave Ramsey's. Watch those 2 interviews side by side, and you'll see all of a sudden there's completely different accounts of the story. Because when you tell the truth, you don't need to remember anything. And you also sleep much better at night. WF membership looks inflationary. Yeah, we're going to talk about the WF and how the lobby structure and think tank structure, which is what they are. They're one of many think tanks, right? The Brookings Institute, I think, is equally, maybe, if not more dangerous than the WF, and everybody ignores it. But I think there's, we can talk a little bit more about that, because I know a little bit about how things work behind the scenes. And I have somebody who I've become friends with who was working in that realm and just got so sick of it and walked away from it. And she also has been confirming a lot of what I know, and we've been comparing notes. So we'll talk more about how that structure of think tanks and lobby firms and strategic managements work over the next year. It's really quite fascinating. And as we understand how it works, then it becomes easier to push back against them, and you become less fearful because you realize there's a whole lot of incompetence going on there as well, right? But it sounds good. More legacy media journalists. Yeah, I think you're going to see, because I think the alternative media space, in many aspects, they've become stenographers for political parties, some of them, where the legacy media has become stenographers for the government that's in power. Both are equally bad. There are some platforms coming up down the middle, and we'll talk more about that in the near future. I hope that gives you some cause for hope, and I hope that helps you have an awesome day, and be good to people, and be good to the people you disagree with politically. That's another thing. You know, I spent this week with some people who, you know, we have, like I said, a lot of crossover, but we all respect each other. And you know what happened? We had an awesome time. We don't agree of everything, but we talked about some stuff that we disagree with, and we just had a lot of fun. And that can be your life as well. So whether people agree with you or not, who cares? Just be good to people. It's going to make you feel better, and it'll change your life. All right, I got to run because I'm going to be late. Have an awesome day.